Welcome to Matflix, video streaming from maternity experts. My name is Dr. Jenny Hall. I am the box set's curator at Matflix, a fellow of the Royal College of Midwives and a former editor of The Practicing Midwife. At Matflix, we bring together videos of talks from top maternity experts into box sets to support your continued professional development, study and revalidation. It is a perfect study accompaniment for midwives, maternity professionals, midwifery students and anyone thinking about a career in the maternity services. My job is bringing together the latest thinking area by area so you do not have to. Not only do you get the video of brilliant talks and relevant content in thematic box sets, you also get access to the audio version so you can listen on the commute or while you walk the dog. Plus links to the latest research in the relevant field, government policy documents, the presenter's PowerPoint and more besides. Sign up to Matflix now for the best video streaming from maternity experts.
These awards, as you know, are a celebration of achievement, effort, change, innovation, management, insight, and the many other traits necessary to sustain a proud profession like midwifery and consistent services in maternity.
We invite people to nominate a colleague or a student or a manager, whatever, where they think that person's a real trailblazer.
And it's really a celebration of all that's good in midwifery and maternity care.
They recognise individuals, they recognise teams, management and educators. Anyone who values excellence and makes improvements. They are essentially a celebration of all of your achievements. So, shall we get on with it? What you do with your day-to-day lives, I just admire you hugely. If you do want to nominate a colleague, a friend, maybe yourself, please speak to the organisers and visit the website, and I really hope that we'll see you at that.
Okay, now the first award is... What's
nothing, I don't know.
We have had a 40% caesarean section rate in the National Maternity Hospital. That is major abdominal surgery.
Around 40,000 mums did not return to work in 2022. It's even more relevant if you're a mum who's experienced birth trauma.
We spend more money on litigation than we currently spend on the maternity services. It's bonkers.
It's in all of our interests, and particularly the government, to improve maternity services.
We can't achieve our mission unless we bring parents and professionals together.
A revolution needs to happen. We need to start working together.
I know it's a hard time, but for goodness sake, it's the best profession in the world.
Be proud to be midwives, be proud of the job that we do and continue to celebrate our successes.
Midwives make a difference to women every single day, and let's not lose that. It's more important than anything.
Welcome to Matflix, video streaming from maternity experts. My name is Dr. Jenny Hall. I am the box set's curator at Matflix, a fellow of the Royal College of Midwives and a former editor of The Practicing Midwife. At Matflix, we bring together videos of talks from top maternity experts into box sets to support your continued professional development, study and revalidation. It is a perfect study accompaniment for midwives, maternity professionals, midwifery students and anyone thinking about a career in the maternity services. My job is bringing together the latest thinking area by area so you do not have to. Not only do you get the video of brilliant talks and relevant content in thematic box sets, you also get access to the audio version so you can listen on the commute or while you walk the dog. Plus links to the latest research in the relevant field, government policy documents, the presenter's PowerPoint, and more besides. Sign up to Matflix now for the best video streaming from maternity experts.
And welcome everyone to this week's Maternity Midwifery Hour. This is series 16 and this is session 12, the last of the series this time. My name's Sue MacDonald and I'm the curator of the Maternity and Midwifery Hours and the Maternity and Midwifery Festivals. And it's my pleasure to be chairing this session this evening. And I'm joined by two fantastic midwives, midwife researchers, academics, women of many parts, I'll say, and that's Doctors Jenny Patterson and Diane Menage, who are with us this evening. And because we always do this to our guests, we ask them to share with us a moment of the week. Shall I start with Diane?
Oh, so
yes, got you.
it was actually a bit more than a moment, but I did something yesterday which I've never ever done before, actually, and that I did a volunteer day. And I've never done that. I've often thought, and we hear about all the benefits of volunteering and I thought, well, when I fully retire, that's something that I might think about. But I actually just did a day somewhere. I thought I can do the odd day. In fact, some companies do that. They actually allow workers to do odd days of volunteering. But anyway, I did, and it's given me a lot to think about. It was absolutely delightful because it's a very different sort of work, isn't it? When you've really got not much responsibility and you're just enjoying it. So yeah, it's given me a lot to reflect on.
Oh, fabulous. And actually, I think it was carers, or no, volunteers month, I think last month.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yes.
About.
Well done, you.
Well, it was very enjoyable. So yeah.
Okay, well, the start of even more, I suspect. Okay, Jenny, can you share your moment of the week with us?
Well, mine is a little wildlife moment. So for those who know me, know that if I'm not in front of a screen or doing midwifery or whatever, I'm in my garden. And I've been gardening for 30 years. But I learned something yesterday, which was brand new to me. And I grow foxgloves that they've grown in front of our window that looks into the garden. They're really tall, like tall, probably about 6 feet high.
Oh,
and all the flowers had gone, and it was just the seeds. So I had these tall seed heads, and they look a bit scraggy. And I said to my husband, I think I need to start cutting them down because we end up with far too many seedlings all over the garden. And I said, I'll take those ones down to tidy up the view a wee bit. And the next morning I got up and he said, I don't think you want to take them down. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to take them down. Have a look. And there were blue tits on them, feeding from the seed. They were climbing up the head of the foxgloves, poking their beaks into the wee seed heads. I don't know if they were eating aphids or seeds. I don't know what they were eating, but I've never, ever seen birds feed on a foxglove. And I thought, oh, I better leave them there for a bit longer then. So they're still there. But that was my new learning, that blue tits like to feed on foxglove seeds or something.
And that's wonderful. And it's wonderful to watch them because they're so tiny and fluffy.
Well, it brought them really close to the window as well, because the foxgloves are, so we could stand and see them right at the window. It was so it was a little moment. I love those moments, and I got one of those yesterday.
Well, that's fabulous, and thank you to Dan and Jenny for sharing such lovely moments, different and yet still with a lovely feeling for us this week. So thank you for that. Now we're going to let Diane and Jenny have a little rest, and I'm just going to say a big welcome to everyone who's here. Now, I know we'll have new people with us as well as our old friends, and I just want to remind people where we started the Maternity Hour, which was 5 years ago. I can hardly believe it's 5 years, but it is 5 years. So, and we started on the first lockdown for COVID-19, and it was a way of getting midwives, student midwives, everyone in maternity services, because that's always been our priority, to have a link together and actually have information and some continuing professional development, because obviously with the lockdown, and that you'll remember that, we weren't allowed to go to study days or conferences or anything. All we were trying to do is keep everything going, all the clinical side, and get our information other ways. So this is how we started, and we've kind of carried on. Initially we started with a lot of information about COVID, and now we're just going to, well, not, I won't say just, we're going to lots of different midwifery issues, lots of things that are of interest to midwives and student midwives, and actually mums. We had quite a few mums last week, so we have a lot of people coming in the hour. Also people from away, globally, which is lovely. And I just need to remind you that everything we do is recorded. So if you have a power cut, don't panic, because it's recorded and you can catch up later point. Also, you'll enjoy this evening. I know you're going to enjoy this evening, and you may well want to share with your colleagues or your friends. And we're very happy for you to do so. So you just need to get the information that you'll be sent after the hour, and you can share with your colleagues and have a discussion about the things you're going to learn, because it's going to be very useful to you as a midwife and as a student midwife. Also, because everything's stored by Matflix, and so you can access information there. I know we can subscribe for a fairly small, the price of a cup of coffee a month, I think. Not just 1 cup of coffee. But you can have access to everything in the Matflix back catalogue, and there's thousands of video clips and sessions. Very useful if you're doing a project, dissertation, if you're doing any research, or if you're a midwife just getting ready for your revalidation work. So it's well worth accessing going into that. So the other thing is the news. Right, because I'm very conscious of the time, but I'm going to say, and I don't know if we've got anyone from Kenya today, and if we have, big welcome to you. I want to say a big congratulations to Professor Evelyn Rotich, who's the newest professor in midwifery in Kenya. And it's so lovely when you get those bits of news through to know that there's lovely things happening in all over the world for midwives and midwifery. The other thing that today there was from Insight to Impact Summit, led by Progress in Partnership, taking place at the RCOG, Royal College of Midwives today, aimed very much at trust board level and ICB chair level, plus chief executives, chaired by Sean Linton, and it did have the Minister for Health, Wes Streeting. So I'm sure there's be more information coming from that once they start putting things out as announcements. If you go onto Twitter, there's lots of little snippets about what was discussed, which is very interesting. Also, it's Birth Awareness Week this week, and the Birth Trauma Association are focusing on marginalised groups facing additional barriers in maternity care. And they're also offering 2 late night peer support evenings for mums. So you just have to access their phone number. Now, I've put the BTA website on the resources sheet. So you just need to check out on the website. Loads of information. It's a fantastic website for mums and families as well as professionals. Loads of information, stories from women, very thought-provoking, and also information for professionals that will help you in your practice about dealing with things like post-traumatic stress syndrome and what to look out for in the women you're caring for. So I would commend that to you. And also, this is very relevant as we come into the holiday season, and this is that it's Ultraviolet Awareness Month. So make sure you've got your sunblock and your sun protection on for the next few weeks. It's also 17th, which I think is tomorrow, is World Day for International Justice, and the 18th is Black Leaders Awareness Day, which is fabulous. I also want to say congratulations to Dr. Dale Spence, who's appointed the RCM Director for Northern Ireland just this week, so big congratulations. Fantastic to have her there. And the only other comment I want to make is about the rising rate of measles, and one of the children has died very sadly of measles this week, and this reminds us that we're very lucky that we have vaccinations available, and it gave me the thought that we do have a lot of resources in the Matflix catalogue, and there are some really good clips. And if again, have a look on the resources sheet if you need a bit of refresher about information you need to give parents and families about vaccination and the kind of when you're meant to recommend it. Right, and I'm almost perfect on timing, so I'm going to now go into the main meat of this evening, and we're welcoming back our 2 wonderful midwife researchers who are going to share their next part of their story. And many of you will have come in to listen to Diane and Jenny talking before, a bit earlier. I can't hear, it must be months and months ago now. It feels like a long time. And I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Diane Minaj. She's a midwife with a lifelong interest in women's health and well-being, who throughout her career as a nurse and a midwife, she's always wanted to focus on individualized evidence-based care through relationships. And one of the key things she's done is extensive work and research into compassion. And earlier this year, she set up the International Research Network for Compassionate Midwifery. She's also presented and written extensively and has recently published Love in Midwifery. I have to say, also have a look online to see Diane and Jenny's CV, full CVs, because I'm just giving a little edited bits now. Also, because we've got Diane and Jenny are going to do very much a double act. Fantastic. So I'm delighted that Dr. Jenny Patterson is with us. midwife since 2007. She's worked within the NHS and independently, and is currently midwifery lecturer at Edinburgh Napier in Scotland. And her PhD thesis explored post-traumatic stress disorder in women post-childbirth. She's published several midwifery journal articles, contributed book chapters, and presented in the UK and Europe. And her current research interests include exploring how maternity care providers and interpreters can best collaborate to provide high quality care for women whose first language is not that of the country in which they're receiving maternity care. So welcome to Diane and to Jenny. The screen is now yours. Thank
you, Sue.
Thank you very much, Sue, and thank you for everybody for inviting us to be here yet again. We're delighted to have another opportunity to speak with you, and a little update on where we are in our conversation around love and midwifery. So just a little introduction. So you've had a little introduction of both of us there. Diane and I met a few years ago when we were both in the last months or year of completing PhDs, and we met at a conference which was about the type of analysis method we were both using. And when we met each other and we started chatting and realized we were midwives and realized that we'd both been independent midwives and that we both grew vegetables, and we had children, and we had all this in common. We had a great conversation. And then we chatted a wee bit about the different research we were doing, and I was looking at women's experiences that they had found traumatic, so their perception had been a traumatic birth experience. And Diane was looking at the complete other end and looking at women's experiences where they had considered their experience to be very positive and compassionate. And that we found that interesting, that we're both coming at it from a very, very different ends of the spectrum. But also, as we started to chat, realized that there was a lot of commonality in what we were discovering. And fundamentally, we were both realized we were talking and looking at the humanity of the people involved, whether that's the women and families and partners, or the care providers and midwives and obstetricians and everybody who's involved. So we decided at the end that once we'd finished our PhDs, we would swap and read each other's. And we were even more convinced that we were both almost coming to similar conclusions, and the relationship between, particularly how compassion might actually be the preventative intervention that may reduce trauma. So we have, that's a whole other conversation. But we started writing a wee bit together and speaking in different places together. And then must be nearly 2.5 years ago now, Diane, we were on a wee online chat, and Diane said, Jenny, sorry, actually just before we come to that, we both realized that in our PhDs, when we looked back, we'd both written about love. I'd mentioned it in passing, thinking, hang on, where does love fit into this human picture? And is it just a 4-letter word that we daren't use in midwifery? And that was I couldn't go down that avenue in my PhD because it was too complicated. It was too much of a tangent to what I was doing. And Diane had also written about it and questioned its place. And so on this day, Diane came to me and she said, Jenny, I think we should write a book. And I go, yeah, okay. She said, well, we could get lots of authors. We could do an edited book, invite lots of other people to write. And I think, yeah, that sounds possible. Okay, what are we going to write about? And Diane said, we're going to write about love. And I went, yeah, we are. So that was the start of it. And then we contacted midwives. Diane did lots of interviewing and speaking to different midwives. I did some connecting. We had a little bit of look on the internet. I thought, well, hang on, have people been writing about this before? And I sort of did a little search and found very, very little material that explicitly uses the word love, either in the title of an article or a chapter or a book. I found some, but very little. And I did the same sort of search looking at nursing, and there was a lot more. And I thought, hang on a minute, I think we need to raise this a wee bit. We need to bring this up into conversation a little bit more. So it just confirmed for us that we needed to write something about this. And then as we spoke to other midwives, and maybe Dan might like to add something here, we were getting a lot of, oh yes, absolutely, I'd like us to talk about this. And we got some people go, well, is it professional? And what do we mean by love? And so we got a good spectrum of thoughts, and all of that feedback helped us to decide what the book was going to focus on and contain, which I'll cover in a wee minute. Do you want to say anything more about that, Diane?
I think that what we realised was that in our PhDs, we'd both mentioned love, hadn't we?
Yeah.
When we went back to look at our thesis, because you forget what's in your thesis, it's too long. And, you know, once you've submitted it, that's it. You've put a bit of distance between you for a while. But when we went back to look, we realised that we had already talked about love. For me, if I thought at the end of my PhD, when you've spent all that time thinking about compassion, well, I had, and the question that remained really for me was, well, that's great. I know a lot about compassion now, but why would you bother? What makes you bother to be compassionate? And so the seeds of the book were there, both in Jenny's PhD and in mine. We both raised this question, what is the underlying thing that makes us do this? And I know as Jenny said, there was very little about it in midwifery, because Billie Hunter, she'd done a whole body of work on emotion work, hadn't she? But stopped short of what emotion are we talking about? And I think I loved all that Billie Hunter's work. It was just fabulous. And it was the building blocks really for a lot of what I did, and a lot of what a lot of other people have done about emotion work. But yeah, the seeds were already there.
Yeah, so I think we just decided we want to explicitly explore this and talk about it, and we wanted to fundamentally start putting this on paper and starting a conversation. So we have completed the book. It is published now, and we'll mention it a wee bit in a moment. But this book is not all our answers or all the solutions. It's just exploring, and there's a lot of excellent. The authors are just fantastic. So I'll describe that in a minute. But brilliant, and we want to start a conversation. So it's so good to be here today. And we hope that those who are listening, or those who continue to listen, will start to talk to each other about this. Is this real? Why do we not explicitly talk about it? And when Diane said there about that motivation, what drives us to be compassionate, and I had quoted the Dalai Lama in my PhD, and I couldn't get to my PhD in time for this meeting, but I found that the quote pretty much that I used. And basically he connects love with a sense of responsibility and concern for others' well-being, suggesting that genuine love is not simply a feeling, but also a motivation for action. And that ties exactly with where Diane's coming from as well. So this is what we wanted to really explore in the context of midwifery. So I think Diane might like to go on from here.
Thank you. Yeah. So we haven't been talking about love, but what have we been allowed to talk about in midwifery? Well, we've been allowed to talk about oxytocin, and that's probably about as far as it has got. It's not that nobody's ever mentioned it, because Michel Audin mentioned, not that he's a midwife, but he's an obstetrician, but he talked about love. And there's been one or two other people way back in 2012. Jennifer Hall, in her work, she did some work on a piece of work on spiritual midwifery and mentioned love in that. But generally, as Jenny has said, it's not something that we've talked about. Oh, the dog barking. You can tell it's live, can't you? But we've been allowed to talk about oxytocin, the hormone, and sometimes even a little. I always wonder if this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek when people say, "Oh, it's called love hormone," and raise their eyebrows. But oxytocin isn't tongue-in-cheek. Oxytocin is quite serious. So it's not just oxytocin, but it's a number of other hormones that also come into play. That are so very involved in the physiology and the emotions of birth and parenting. And of course, we do know about some of the part that oxytocin plays in starting labour and in at the birth, in delivery of the placenta, and of course in breastfeeding and in attachment. Attachment, that amazing, strong feeling of bonding and love. What else can you say but love? That happens with the newborn and the primary caregiver. Typically, it's the mother-baby dyad. And we know about that, and we try to promote and protect that. But if we think a little bit more, if we think a bit bigger than that, we must remember that this emotion, this very strong emotion, has got an evolutionary function, and it's to do with us being mammals. I write quite a little bit about that in the book, and talk about how most reptiles, amphibians, and some birds, they don't have this. They don't have this need for this strong attachment, because their babies, if you like, are born ready to go, and it's on you, get on with it. Whereas with some birds and mammals, their young are not born ready to go. So there has to have been some sort of function which will enable the mother, and sometimes both parents, to nurture this very vulnerable baby, whatever mammal or bird that might be. But of course, with human young, we birth some of the most vulnerable, because they are going to need the attention of their primary caregiver, usually the mother. They're going to need that for the longest time. I think elephants come close, don't they? And possibly some of the whales, but it's a long time before our young are independent. So it's an evolutionary response which happened, we don't know, many hundreds of thousands of years ago, maybe more. And it has a function. So we can look at it in those terms. But what we argue, and what other people have also argued, we're not alone in this, is that primary love that we think of with the mother-baby dyad is the blueprint for all other loves. It's possible as humans, we've been able to have lots of adaptations of love. So there's maternal love, paternal love, sibling love, there's altruism, there's all sorts of different sorts of love. Love thy neighbour. So we go into this a lot more in the book, so I'm really whistling through this. So what else is there to say about love? Lots more. We have looked at the philosophical side of love. So I've talked a little bit about the hormonal, physiological, evolutionary side, but we've also talked about the physiological side of it. The philosophical side of it. We've looked at it from the point of view of theology, and Jenny mentioned the Dalai Lama, and we've looked at it in terms of world religions and people of no religion. It is universal. We've also looked at it as a value, and this is where it's really quite useful to look at our nursing colleagues. In nursing, there have been some amazing nursing scholars who have talked and written widely about nursing, about love being a value in nursing. And for some reason, we haven't done this in midwifery. Not the saying that we are the same as nurses, but what I'm saying is, and even in medicine, there has been more discussion and writing about love as a value than there has been in midwifery. We're not altogether sure why that is. So Jean Watson was a fantastic nursing scholar who has written about nursing care being based on this value of love. And what does she mean by love? And we've written a whole chapter about what do we mean by love. But what we're talking about is that human connection. It's inside of all of us, and it's about connecting with that in ourselves and then connecting with others. And love is also, we like to talk about it not the only ones, as a doing word, a verb. So it's not purely an emotion. It's not purely something that happens to us. It's, as Jenny has already referred to, it is a driver for action. And this is where it really comes into its own in midwifery. So there's a whole chapter on love as action. A fantastic midwife called Indy Luna has written that chapter in the second part of the book. But many scholars, many people even outside of midwifery, have written about love as something that we do, as a driver for action.
So I think moving on from the idea of love being a verb and a value, and if we think about things like loving care, loving kindness, then you can see how that comes to life. And love is also a choice. So it's not just a woozy feeling and we'll do it if we feel good. It's really hard. And that's one of the things that comes out very strongly in the book. This book is not soppy. This book is not all gooey. This book is actually, and what we've discovered is love is hard. Love requires choice. It requires dedication. It requires sacrifice. There are challenges in it. There are human issues around when something is not loving and when love is not present. So it really is a choice. And when one of the things that has come back to us is what about the challenges in midwifery in the workplace in many places at the moment, in many contexts of midwifery. Maybe love is a bit soft and a bit like, oh, really? I mean, how can that actually make a difference here? But one of the things that I feel, and from a lot of the trauma training that I've done and trauma management training I've done, is that one of the key things is that we cannot change other people. I cannot make other people behave or act in a certain way. I can only do that with myself. I can change myself. And that's hard. We all know how hard it is to change ourselves or improve ourselves or be different than we might want to be or need to be or that we think we should. But we can make a choice each day. Today, I am going to be the best I can be. Today, I am going to be positive in my engagements with other people. Today, I am going to be loving in my approaches with other people. And we can choose that. But this isn't about, oh, suddenly it's down to us to do something more as midwives, take on another mantle, be responsible for something else as well as all that we do. But it's about looking at the approach that we're taking towards other people. Are we going to look at them in a positive, loving approach or not? And how do we do that? And what do we need? That includes looking at ourselves. So we have Kate Greenstock, who brought out the book Flourish a couple of years ago, which is wonderful. She's written a whole chapter about self-love, about what do we do in terms of taking care of ourselves so that we then are able to go out and be loving in our approach without a great cost to ourselves, because there's cost involved in this. And how do we seek what we need? And we also, in one of the chapters, we have a person called Claire Wardhaw. She is not a midwife. Her history's in theology, and she actually co-authored a chapter with Professor Leslie Page, which is the most beautiful chapter, and they've written it as letters to one another. They got on like a house on fire. They're great friends now. They've never met each other before, and they've had this amazing conversation, and it's really worth that chapter. Is so special. But Claire says vulnerability makes us feel powerless. Now, can we all relate to vulnerability as midwives? And we need someone, we need another person sometimes to meet our need. And love is the power that can sit within that and make that happen. And love is only manifest in the world through people. And then Kate Greenstock says, the way we love ourselves begins to be reflected in our emerging knowledge of how we contribute best to the people around us. So this is really, this is at the heart of the doing, the verb, and the choices that we make. And then, Diane's mentioned the hormone, the love hormone, and you'd think, oh, we're around birthing people all the time, and we could soak up oxytocin everywhere. If you've ever done 2 hours in a breastfeeding clinic, yeah, you soak up oxytocin, you come out there going, but you would think, we'd be surrounded in love. And so a midwife, when we were chatting about this and speaking to different people, somebody said to us, you would think midwifery would be filled with love, given that we're nurturing the love hormone. But we've lost this love, not because we don't have it. It's buried inside layers of institutional fear, disappointment, apathy, covering up our love for one another. I know it's there deep down. It's how do we get it back? And so that brings me on a wee bit to talk about the workplace, because we have had this question, it has come up a few times. And Anna and Sheena Byram have written an amazing chapter about love for colleagues. And one of the things they say is love can be understood as a social force with the potential to build a sense of community, care, connection in any context, including throughout our workplaces. Our workplaces are social environments where relationships either flourish or become diminished. So we need this in our workplace. We need to look at this. To flourish, we need loving connection between colleagues. We need to be enabled and supported to provide the women-centred care that we want to provide. And when we're unable to do this, midwives can become disillusioned and leave. And actually that ties in very much with the research I did. My research findings were that one of the most traumatic things for a woman during her birth experience is if she's treated discompassionately then by her care providers. So if she perceives that interaction with the care provider to be negative or dehumanizing in some way, that is one of the most important sources of trauma. So, but, you know, that's not coming back to say midwives are in the wrong here. It's about if midwives, we want midwives to really be present to women and give the best. We need to look after the midwives. We need to look after each other. We need a midwife-centred organisation. And that's what they're talking about here as well. We need the midwives to be supported. So we keep going and then we provide that care. And also, we're all very aware in many parts of the country and in different parts of the world that there's a lot of bullying and incivility occurring within healthcare, within midwifery, across all the NHS. And it's a really challenging environment for many, many people. But bullying is a consequence and a symptom of negative culture and poor leadership. And unkind behaviour develops and unhelpful cliques develop. So this is some of the pictures. So Anna and Sheena have really taken this apart and explored it and shone a light on it and said, well, where does love sit within here? In reality, in practice, in everyday work that we do. Can I have the next slide, Diane, please? So just to give you a little overview, we've mentioned there's different parts to this, but we wanted to address this in response to the questions and the conversations that we had. So we've written the book in 3 parts. The first part is about love in context. So what do we mean by love? Diane's written a wonderful chapter there. What do we mean by it? We're not talking about romantic love or we're not talking about sisterly love necessarily. What are we talking about? What do we mean? And then, as I say, Claire Warter and Leslie Page have written a chapter about love and the humanisation of childbirth, which is a very special chapter. And Elizabeth Newnham has written about why we need to talk about love in midwifery, a very in-depth exploration that goes to the heart of concepts like feminism and others. It's a really rich chapter. So I think the love in context really puts love on the map. It says, this is it, it's real, it sits within midwifery and it has a right to sit within midwifery. And yes, we really do need to talk about it. And then part 2, we thought, well, how is it lived out in practice? And some of you may be familiar with, is it Gary Chapman? The name's going out my head there. Gary Chapman's 5 languages of love. Now that relates to romantic love relationships, but the 5 languages, when we looked at them, thought they all link with midwifery very closely. So we have touch, action, words, time, and gift. And so we've written a chapter looking at love as each of those. We've got 5 different authors there. And again, people with really good experience around this. Claire Nutt has written about touch. She's done a lot of work around massage and touch in pregnancy and labour and birth. Brilliant chapter. We've got Indy talking about love in action. Anna Marsh talking about the words, the language, and language again is very much at the heart of the trauma or the compassionate response. So Anna does a really good chapter there. And Diana and I have written one about time. Interestingly, there's lots of ways of looking at time, which we found fascinating. Not just that there's not enough of it, but what are the different, there's some really good recent research about how time can be used well. How do we make the best of the time that we do have? A whole concept called slow midwifery. I mean, it's really fascinating. And I've written about what do we mean by gift. And in my thesis, which was interesting when I saw this, because in my thesis, one of the key theories that I explore is the comparison between care provided, care as gift, and vigil of care. So I won't go into that too much more at the moment, but that I really bring that apart and look at that a wee bit here as well, a bit more deeply. So that's part 2. So we've got love in context. Where does it sit? Why does it sit? Love in practice. How can it be lived out? How is it being lived out already in midwifery? And we're naming it specifically as far as we can there. And then we thought, well, we need to look at the profession. So we want to look at, firstly, love for self, because this is not about hammering midwives with something else they have to take on. This is very much about how do we ensure that midwives are able to take care of themselves and each other and be supported to give good care, obviously, but also to thrive within this environment and to have the job satisfaction and the joy that they've come in here to do. And we've got Anna and Sheena looking at the whole concept of colleagues and workplace. Michelle Waterfalls looked at love and leadership, midwifery leadership, really interesting chapter. Maeve O'Connell and Naomi Donovan talking about love in midwifery education around students, a whole section about where does it sit within our work with students and supporting students, what does it mean there? And Diane, again, another excellent chapter on love and professional issues, just tying in with where can that sit within the NMC and our professional regulations, and how can we talk about it in that context, what's happening there. So I hope, I believe, and we've had feedback so far, that we've got a very meaty book here. It's not a soppy little, oh, let's talk about love and fluffy bunnies. It's a real hard-edged, meaty book about the context of love in practice, and how it can feed into our profession. And we hope, I believe, and we both hope, that by starting this conversation, we're coming at the whole challenge of the midwifery workforce just now, all the challenging things that we're facing as midwives, shortages, workplace pressures, midwives leaving, newly qualified midwives leaving, all the stuff that we face as a profession. We've tried all the heavy sort of reports and audits and various things. We think let's come at it from a completely different perspective and reignite our passions, but also in a real positive, down-to-earth, grounded way that says this is a way we can go forward. So I have to, at this point, thank each and every one of the authors who worked with us. We had a great couple of years writing this and pulling this together. We were warned, I was warned, and I think Diane was, oh, it's really hard doing an edited book. And yes, it had its moments, but I have to say every one of our authors were fantastic. They contributed some amazing work. They opened our eyes. They enriched this book. There was no way Diane and I could have written a book, but it would not have been this book, and it would never have been anywhere near as rich and valuable as we have now, from each and every one of the people that have contributed. So unless Diane has something you would like to add, I think we are ready to say. You've got some questions. We could keep talking, but it would be nice to hear if anybody's got comments or thoughts.
That's right. It'd be nice to talk about the things you want us to talk about, because there's so much that we could say. So we'd love to know what you think.
Thank you so much, Diane and Jenny. It was fantastic. It's lovely to see further on the story, because we were asking questions about love before, and it was quite interesting to think, because you kind of take for granted that you love your work, that you have a love for what you do and for the women and babies you care for. But it was kind of made you think a little bit differently, which was really helpful. And I'm going to go through. I have got some comments through. And first of all, I'll start with comments. I've got from Nat Corden. Hi, Nat. And she says, just came on to add my love for your book. It feels like a guide. It's so meaningful. It needs to be a curriculum book. Love is truly the foundation of midwifery. Thank you both. Well, that's lovely. So teachers out there, this might well be a very useful book. I think it will be a useful book for you all. And then Carol Goddard. Hi, Carol. As I'm listening, I'm doodling the oxytocin hormone, definitely my next tattoo. And then actually, I have seen people with the tattoo, so it's well done there. And then Nat is having another go now. And forgive me, I'm looking away at my other screen, so that's why I'm looking away for a minute to the audience. And Nat says, can I just add, the letter chapter that Leslie Page wrote was epic. I felt I needed more. I loved it. Felt the words between friends, but so cleverly done. Please tell them to do more. Right, okay, message.
We will.
It would be nice to think. I'm not sure if Leslie's on tonight, but she does. I know she sometimes does come in on the hour. And then Diane Garland. Hi, Diane. Diane says, Love in Midwifery is the centre of my international work. My new book, due out in December 2025, is called Water Birth for the 21st Century, Love, Skills and Knowledge. So this is going to become this is a trend. I know Diane had that title anyway. I tell you what I'd like to know. You've whetted my appetite because I want to know about this slow midwifery, Jenny. What is this slow midwifery? Does it gather you more time in a day?
It doesn't. It's not so much about gathering the time in the day. It's about how we use that time, how we take that time to maybe look at someone, to pay attention to someone. Because if we pay attention and listen, and I'm trying to remember, I can't remember all the details that are in there, but if we pay attention and look and are present to somebody, then straight away we're being compassionate. Straight away that person knows we're with them. And within that, we will gain much more information and connection and knowledge about what they need, what's happening for them, than we might in another way. So it's about using that time in an optimal way to gain the connection, the rapport, the knowledge that we need. Dan, if you've got something you'd like to add, because I'm trying to remember if there's anything more specific.
Yeah, and that's staying in the moment, because it's very easy, isn't it, when there's too much to do and not enough time. And we're brilliant at that in midwifery, aren't we? It's actually, if you look back, it's never been much, the mindset has never been much different. Busyness and midwifery are almost synonymous. And the women will say, oh, you're very busy. The midwives are very busy. The midwives will say they're very busy. They are very busy. They are. I'm not saying they're not. They are very busy. But it's become almost like your identification. And it's easy to think about what you've got to do next, what rather than staying in the moment. And of course, midwives do have to do this, don't they? They do have to think, what would happen if, what is my workload like now? What about that, the woman that I said I would go back to? They do have to think of all that. But also it's about trying to spend just a few seconds at a time in the moment, which is a skill you can practice. And it allows you to be much more present and to be more connected with the kind of loving practice that's inside you. It's there anyway. It's recognizing the love inside you that's wanting to come out.
And I think the thing is, it doesn't take that much more time to do that, but what we gain from it, both ourselves as midwives and the people we're caring for, is rich. And care can be more targeted and appropriate and safe, because we've taken it's just changing the way we look at it. We talk in that chapter also about emotional intelligence, and there's a lot of work by Mo Tabib, that she's written loads of work around this as well. So we're really starting to explore there are ways in which we could really optimize those moments of time by just adjusting our mindset a little bit and the way we use those moments. We still can get our stuff done, but we might get things done more effectively and more meaningfully.
You might hear things that the woman might not say because you're saying, I've got time for you.
And actually, when you do that, it becomes safer because you realize, you become aware of things that become critically important in the unraveling of care and the way that care is given, which you might miss if you're too busy. So actually, you end up saving time because you've picked up on things that are then addressed more effectively. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. You finished, Jenny?
No, I'm finished. I
could read a little bit about it from the book if you want me to. Is the time?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, so
I'm waiting for any more questions to come through.
So about busyness.
Yes.
You know, busyness has almost come synonymous with midwifery work. And many of us have often heard women say, I didn't like to ask her or bother her, the midwife, because she was so busy. And such busyness can be problematic, firstly for the women and families who feel they cannot bother the midwife who is too busy. And then this has a knock-on effect. They're reluctant to ask the midwife questions or ask for help. They may not disclose they're feeling unwell, frightened, depressed. They do not seek support with breastfeeding. The list goes on. The problems don't go away. They're just stacking up, ready to erupt in another way. The problems that should have been picked up and resolved are missed and become more acute. Women and their families get upset or angry and complaints increase. There is a point at which busyness is inefficient and even dangerous. And I think we've all been in situations where we can recognise that.
I mean, I sometimes think we're very busy because we know that the whole service is busy. So you're almost in a sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy of busyness.
Yeah.
Rather than actually sitting down, and as you say, you can use the time better, so it's worth the investment. But it also means you have to be prepared to have a relationship with the mum, a relationship with other members of the team that you may not want to get into. Because I was very struck by you talking, because that was very powerful. You're saying we've lost the love. And it's because of the institution and the sort of everything else that's going on is being bashed out of us, and we're losing that. And that was really powerful, Jenny. I think it was you. I think you.
I said it wasn't my words. It was a midwife who said that to us when we were exploring the book and talking about it. There's quite a lot of quotes within the book from midwives because we had lots of conversations, and everybody we spoke to gave us permission to include their thoughts and reflections. So that's peppered through. So we've got the voices of many, many midwives peppered through the book as well.
And I think an important thing to say is when I interviewed midwives, all sorts of different midwives, and talked to them about what they thought about love and midwifery, what was there? Just wanted to get reactions really on it. And it was amazing. Many of those midwives cried as they told me that they had never had a chance in their whole career to talk about the love in midwifery. And we were at a university last week talking to students about this topic, and we said to the room, has any of the students or any of the lecturers, or there were some qualified midwives there as well, we said, anybody ever had a chance to talk about the love that is in their midwifery practice? And every single person said no. So when you talk, Sue, about educationalists, we need to get this into education. Absolutely. And educationalists need to be brave about this. It seems incredible now to think that many, many midwives, most midwives do understand that, of course, they do. They are driven by love in their relationship-based care and the practice that they love. However, they've never had a chance to talk about it. It's not on the curriculum. It's not anywhere.
That's quite, I thought also a powerful thing you're talking about, love as a value in nursing, but not in midwifery, because that almost surprises me. It should be the other way around. Well, no, it shouldn't be, because you're caring for people in both places, aren't you?
Yes.
But it's sort of, you kind of think it should be in midwifery primarily, because it is all about that. That was fantastic.
There's another really interesting thing that I noticed when we were preparing for last week, because we were down in England. Well, I was down in England, Diane's living in England, but I journeyed to England last week and went round Warwick and Bristol with Diane, and we did some talking about this. And when I was preparing to go, I was thinking, well, which parts, which things might I want to talk about? And I identified two things that join up really well in the book that really struck me. So Claire, who's written the chapter with Leslie, in that part one where they were talking about the theory of love and what do we mean by love, and in the context, she had written, love is a sensory experience. It cannot exist in the mind only, it must be embodied. Through our senses, we intuit a presence, we feel a touch, we hear a tone of voice, we see a face, all of which feeds into our understanding of whether we are in the presence of love or not. Theory. And then chapter 8, there's a quote from, I think it might be from Diane's work, there's a quote that a midwife, a woman says, and she says, I think there is something about the tenderness of a touch, or the lingering of an eye contact, or a squeeze of a hand, the tone of someone's voice, that just indicates that they really get it. And it's a mirror completely. And when I read those two, I thought, that's it. We've got that theory, but then that's what women are telling us. And for me, that's when we connect, and all of us as midwives must I think we're in this job because of those moments. And when we experience those moments in our work, when we really build that connection with someone, when we really feel that, we go home with that warm sense of satisfaction. Ideally, it's been a positive birth as well, but even if it's not, we can still go away knowing we've really been present to somebody, we've really transformed their experience, and we've done what we came into this profession to do. And that gives us a glow, and it gives us something that keeps us going, even when the next shift might be not like that at all. We hold on to those moments. And to hear that described from a theoretical perspective by somebody who's not a midwife, and then by women, that spoke a lot to me.
That's lovely, thank you. Well, I've got questions coming through. I've got more comments first. Helen, hi Helen. She says, I was surprised to see the Ask a Midwife service that I led on appear in the book. I believe it was successful because we digitally spoke to patients with love, but I wasn't able to verbalise it until you wrote that. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Helen. That's important work, actually. And that whole issue of, how do you actually marry up loving midwifery practice and digitalization, because with that we have to do that. I think that's a very interesting area.
Fabulous. Okay. And Professor Jane Code, hi Jane.
Whoa.
Hi, well done to both to raise these issues. What's your next plans? Oh, Jane.
Oh, thank you so much, Jane, for joining. Jane was my director of studies for my PhD.
Oh wow!
So I'm quite surprised that she's joined tonight, but really delighted. So she was very inspiring as my kind of supervisor. And yeah, well, my husband keeps saying, "Are you finished now? Is that it? Is that it?" But Jane, probably not. There probably is the next thing.
There might. we have hinted that maybe there needs to be a follow-on, but I think there needs to be lots of conversations before we decide whether we're adding to this or whether, because I know Diane has some other projects ongoing as well, and maybe when I don't have to do quite as much teaching, although I love being around the students and supporting them as well, maybe that'll open up another avenue, but who knows where it's going next.
Oh wow. Well, that's even more exciting, isn't it?
We want to try and gather more stories from midwives around the world, not just in the UK, around the world, about their experience of loving their work. Because You know, one of the things I've got to say is the most compelling reason for practicing lovingly, practicing midwifery lovingly, is it makes us feel better. Because although we talked about having the love bashed out of you, it's not gone, it's there. And what we would love is for midwives to start to talk about this and start to recognize and reconnect with the love that's already in them, and which they probably show every day. But if they feel it's been bashed out of them, we want those midwives to also know it's still there and they can reconnect.
And it's not just about how we love the women and families and the people we care for. It's about how do we love each other as midwives. You know, I think one of the shocking things when I came into midwifery, I have 4 sons, and when I started midwifery, they were all at school. My house was full of testosterone in men, and I thought, great, I'm going to work around women. You know, it'll be fantastic. And I discovered actually sometimes it's not, because of the bullying and because of some of the undermining that goes on. I was quite shocked to find that we can treat each other really badly. And when I was writing my PhD, I came across a paper by Deb Hughes, I think, called Midwives Still Eating Their Young, and a very challenging paper about, you know, how we treat students. And I see that still today. I've been in meetings today hearing some of this. And so how do we start being kinder and more loving to one another as midwives? And as I come back to it, it's I can only change me. I can't change. I can try, and there'll be days when I get it wrong, and days when I'm not compassionate, and days when I'm a bit exhausted and tired and grumpy and say the wrong thing. We're human. We'll all do that. But if we aim, and there's another expression that I talk about in one of my chapters about the benevolent gaze. It comes from a sort of faith spirituality perspective, but it's about looking at somebody, choosing to look at somebody with compassion and kindness and love, rather than, oh, they're really annoying, I don't like that person. Okay, let's look at that person, because that individual, this is something I learned in the trauma training as well, that individual is a valuable human being with gifts and qualities and things that they bring in. And perhaps, yes, they're not demonstrating that to us in front of us right now. Perhaps they're grumpy, perhaps they've been bullying us, perhaps they're nippy, but they're still a human being who deserves to be looked at. And when we start offering that, that spreads and that comes back. And people perceive that little by little, and it makes a difference. So I've got lots of things I could say about that, but I'm aware of time.
You've given that bit. That's lovely. We've got a few more. Got another comment from Zara, who says, "Hi Jenny, it's Zara from Napier. I'm doing oxytocin and its power with socializing. I really have ideas that women may be more relaxed and less anxious if there was more socializing with other pregnant women."
Yeah, very likely, and that, I think there's a lot of I wonder what she's I'm really wondering what she's getting at. She's probably got a particular thing in mind. But yeah, so we're social animals, aren't we? Going back to us, you know, as being animals, we're social animals, and that makes us feel good when we have social interaction, learn about each other, tell each other about ourselves. That builds trust.
There's also a lot of work, I think in the US and in parts of the UK now, around centering pregnancy, where antenatal care is provided in groups, where midwives, you know, women come together, and part of the positive of that is that they interact and they chat and they share stories and they get to know each other. So it's a very social form of providing antenatal care, which can be really beneficial. And we don't do it routinely across the UK, but it's certainly there. So that aspect of the social side and the benefits of that is already, there's work out there and has been for a while.
Okay, so Zara, you've got some ideas there for your next steps on that socializing. Then I have a question from Tracy Curran, who says, "How do you think we can get love on the agenda when the headline grabbing interventions are all about technological fixes and technologies that companies can develop and sell, and that our practice is mainly audited on what documentation we've done or failed to do, not whether we've shown love to another human being?" That's a very powerful thing, Thank you, Tracy. Good question.
Well,
Who's going to take it?
Have I got time to answer it or not?
Yes, you have. Maybe.
Well, it comes back to love. You know, love is difficult, and you need to be quite brave. And we talk about being a human being first. Yes, and you know, Sue knows that Sue's heard this before, I'm sure. But you have to keep coming back to the fact that you're a human being first. Yes, you are an employee. Yes, you are a professional, and each of those is an important role, very important role. But you really do have to, with love, be brave enough to be a human being first. And we suggest that you're a human being first, a professional second, and an employee third. And if you use that as your guide, it will be beneficial for everybody. For yourself, for everybody that you look after, for your employer, and for your profession, because it's about having the courage to connect with the love in yourself, to see the human in other people, and to be that human being first. If it doesn't seem right as a human being, then it's not right.
Good one, Diane. Thank you. And I've got some more comments now because I'm very conscious of the time. This hour always goes too fast. Nat's having a third bite at the apple. Hi, Nat. And I feel that when we're task focused in clinic, that we need to look up more. It's so hard when time is so short, but you are so right. Loving practice. I know I had a better day when I felt connection with the women. That's lovely, Nat. Thank you so much. And then Mary D says, hi Mary, as a home birth midwife, I've experienced love and compassion is the antidote to trauma. So important to work on self-love, love for colleagues, which ultimately nurtures and empowers a loving, trusting relationship with women. Great. And then Nat, systems have taken love. Just as our resilience is being tested, I look forward to reading your book. That's great. Thank you, Nat. And then Zara says, we're back with Zara. Hi, my project with Ness is the power of oxytocin socializing. I really feel women's relationships with each other will promote natural oxytocin and reduce anxiety, leading to social prescribing. So I think that's finishing the story on that there.
Yeah, Zara, oxytocin is so interesting, and maybe we could talk about it sometime. But oxytocin is extremely powerful and very, very crucial. But it also has a dark side, and we talk about that in the book.
Wow.
And midwives should know about it, but they don't seem to.
Oh, okay. We need to know the dark and the light side of oxytocin.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can link Zara and Diane up.
Fabulous. Thank you, Jenny. This is the beauty of connections, isn't it? Fantastic. And we've just got our last comment now from Jill Phillips. Hi, Jill, who says, just popping in to say hello. I look forward to catching up with this. My grandson's 3rd birthday today, so he might be a little bit busy. It was such a pleasure to go to Diane and Jenny's book launch. And that's hashtag MatExp, as we all know Jill from.
Lovely, Jill.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to our lovely audience for those comments and questions, which have really got that conversation going. And I think it's going to continue somehow. I get that feeling. And as I said a few minutes ago, this hour it goes too quickly. It's the quickest hour in the week for me. And it's been extra quick, and it's been such a fabulous way to finish this series. So thank you so much to Diane and Jenny for joining us and really picking out such a fundamental part of midwifery. And it's feeling like a real solution to some of the things that are happening in midwifery and maternity services at the moment, to get that connection and to recapture our love and our joy in what we do and connect much better with women and families in day-to-day work is what we should be doing. So thank you so much to Diane and Jenny. And thank you also to Angela, who's recording all this so that it will be available in the 6 o'clock on Friday morning in a podcast for those of you who want to be doing that. That's listening to, which is very good. I know we've got people who are very keen on doing that. And also it'll be available through the newsletter next week, so you'll be able to get that. So we'll take a bit of a break. We're back on the 17th of September. And actually, over this period of time, this is the time, apart from putting on your sunblock and not burning your skin, it's a good time to catch up with some of the maternity and midwifery hours you might have missed, because we've got a lot to go. So have a look on Netflix, and that's a good place to be, really. We've got the Cardiff Festivals coming up on the 23rd of September. So if you haven't enlisted for that, do so. And also, in the meantime, stay safe and well, and we'll see you in September. And thank you again to Diane and Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you.